Story 1. My father's school conducted a guided tour through the woods to explore and learn about local herbs. A few years later, when my father was still a child, the police showed up and asked him if he recognized the man in a picture they presented. My father explained that the man was the herbalist tour guide. Apparently, the man had murdered several boys and had my father's name and address in his car. By that time, the police had apprehended the man. I believe he either took his own life or died under suspicious circumstances. Story 2. Deceased bodies may produce sounds when moved. I worked as a paramedic and firefighter for 21 years and was frequently around deceased individuals. Story 3. The inside of a sea turtle's mouth and throat looks like something straight out of a horror movie monster. It is absolutely covered in spines. Sea turtles swallow a lot of seawater when eating food, which they then vomit back out. The spines keep the food in but let the water out. Story 4. All of these make my flatworm tidbit seem meek. When flatworms mate, two males use their split penises to fence one another. The winner, or the flatworm that stabs the other with its penis dagger, remains male while the loser becomes female and is impregnated. Story 5. There is literally nowhere in your house where you can store your toothbrush without it getting contaminated with fecal matter. Thanks, Mythbusters. Story 6. That one misfolded protein can end up making a brain as useless as rotting cheese. Story 7. Sometimes when you have a sharp pain in your chest, specifically in the lung area, when breathing in, it could be because there is not enough fluid around the lung, causing it to stick to a rib, or because your diaphragm is not in the correct place. Story 8. Some people are born with a malformed mass of veins in their brain called an arteriovenous malformation, and they have no idea unless it is seen on a computed tomography scan or magnetic resonance imaging. Then one day it can burst without warning, and that happy, healthy person can die or suffer brain damage, paralysis, or other serious effects. No warning. This happened to my 22-year-old niece yesterday. She is in a coma now. It is heartbreaking. Story 9. The chainsaw was invented by two doctors to assist in childbirth. Sawing through the pelvic bone gives the mother and baby a better chance of survival if the baby is too large. Story 10. Learning that some plants can actually communicate with each other suddenly makes my herb garden feel more like a gossip column. Story 11. You have probably heard the fact that 70% of the human body is water. We know this because of a Japanese general who heated people in an oven. Story 12. I learned that some people will use any hole in a sexual way, including a surgical hole in the stomach to collect stool into a bag called a colostomy. Additionally, some individuals with these types of openings may engage in prostitution involving the use of that hole. This is known because they sometimes come in with infections in these areas and admit to this behavior. I also learned that this sexual act is called a Philly sidecar. Story 13. Honestly, this is what a newborn horse's hooves look like. I was traumatized for months after I had just given birth myself. Luckily, I did not have a horse baby. Story 14. You can get a light bulb into your mouth, but you cannot get it out. It just freaks me out because, despite never having the urge to slide a light bulb into my mouth, ever since I learned that, I am afraid it might somehow happen. Story 15. I had to have a cesarean section when our daughter was born and heard one doctor say to the other doctor, "Pass me the uterus, I'm going to clean it." I still don't know whether my uterus was actually lifted out, and I still don't want to know. Update. I am, thankfully, not as squeamish as my post may have made me seem. When I heard that sentence, I immediately thought, wow, if I were more squeamish, I would probably be horrified right now or crying. I know that people working in the medical field consider this normal, and that's okay. Stuff like this becomes normal when you have to deal with it every day. I just felt they could have said that less loudly or signaled to their colleague, as not everyone wants to hear that. Thank you for all the comments. Story 16. The president of Argentina and his wife kept Eva Perón's dead body at the breakfast table. Story 17. I commented on this before, but if you have abdominal surgery and the surgeon needs your intestines out of the way, they do not try to put them back exactly as they were. They can place them in almost any position, and the intestines will sort themselves out. I became even more surprised when someone else mentioned that you can often feel them wriggling back into position. Story 18. per my best friend who is a therapist. They were going to include a condition called hebephilia in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, but they did not because research showed it was not outside of the norm, meaning it was not abnormal, which psychopathology should be by definition. Hebephilia is the sexual desire for children aged 11 to 14. Story 19. Dolphins are known to be quite intelligent, but they can also be cruel. In some cases, they have been documented killing baby dolphins of other groups, seemingly for fun. Story 20. Everyone thinks guinea worms, the ones you have to slowly twist out of your skin around a stick, are purely a tropical phenomenon. Not true. My state, Minnesota, has 7 species of guinea worms. My dad has been infected with them before. Story 21. Ascaris worms are a type of large parasitic roundworm that live in the human digestive tract. They are common in many parts of the world. I used to work at a hospital where we treated many patients from very poor and remote areas, especially Central America, where roundworm infection is prevalent. During surgery, anesthesia causes the blood to become slightly alkaline, which the worms dislike. After a few minutes, they start emerging from various openings in the body, such as the nose, mouth, and rectum. These are full-sized worms that resemble earthworms. It is one of the most unpleasant experiences imaginable. Patients are treated with a drug called albendazole. They pass dead worms in their stool for 3 days and then recover. Story 22. Bed bugs mate through a process called traumatic insemination. The male bed bug stabs the female in her abdomen with his sharp reproductive organ, then deposits sperm directly into her body cavity. Story 23. Not so creepy, but yesterday someone posted about the Space Shuttle Challenger explosion. Some astronauts survived the explosion until they hit the ocean. Very sad to learn that. Story 24. There are over 200 dead bodies located on top of Mount Everest that serve as waypoints for climbers because it is too risky to retrieve them. Story 25. Giving birth to a child is often talked about. Giving birth to the placenta is something nobody discusses. It felt like the nurse pulled a giant squid out of my vagina, which was very unpleasant. After that, she pushed my abdomen, and blood squirted out of me, spraying her completely. It was absolutely disgusting. Story 26. There are more cells in your body that belong to other organisms such as bacteria, fungi, viruses, and parasites than actual human cells. Some are beneficial, some harmful, and most are neutral. Additionally, we have microplastics in our bodies as well. Story 27. The cardiopulmonary resuscitation dummy face is based on the face of a teenage girl found dead in the Seine River in Paris in the 19th century. Her cause of death and identity are still unknown. Story 28. When abdominal surgery requires your small intestines to be out of the way, they take them out and hang them on a rack. The rack has hooks to prevent your intestines from moving off and onto the floor. When it is time to put them back in, they simply place them back into the abdominal cavity, and they move back into place. Your intestines have a mind of their own. Story 29. Your brain chooses to ignore your nose. If it did not, you would notice it in your point of view constantly. You only see it in your point of view when you want to see it. Story 30. Carl Tanzler fell in love with Maria Elena Milagro de Hoyos, a young tuberculosis patient at the Key West Hospital, where he was a radiology technician. His fondness grew into an obsession after she died in 1931. Tanzler lived with the body of the woman he loved for 7 years. When she started to decompose, he embalmed her body and stuffed it with cotton wool. When he was eventually discovered, he was asked at his trial if he ever consummated their relationship. He said no, but material was found in the cotton wool of her bathing suit area. Story 31. Up until June 2024, there was no law against necrophilia in Michigan. A month ago, it became illegal to engage in sexual activities with a deceased person. Story 32. In meteor apocalypse movies, it usually starts with some random research team discovering the meteor by accident, then figuring out it is headed for Earth. That is pretty much what we have to hope for. Those meteors are fast. Faster than you can imagine. In movies, it is this huge ball of fire that tears through the atmosphere in a cinematic masterpiece that allows the people below to see how doomed they are. That is not true in real life. In real life, it goes from the edge of our atmosphere to Earth in less than a second. It hits the Earth so hard it vaporizes the ground it touches and itself. It hits with such force that the ground moves like when you throw a boulder into a lake. Waves of Earth become fluid and destroy everything in a massive surge of destruction. But what is really scary is that it is cold. It is cold until it hits some type of atmosphere from a planet or space body. Because it is cold, it is hard to detect with just pointing instruments into space. Unless we are specifically looking for it, we won't see it. We won't know that we are about to die. We won't know that a meteor is about to hit us until we see a literal tsunami of Earth outside our window, about to kill us. That is why movies have people discovering it by accident. The chances of finding it on purpose are low. There is some good news regarding this. Thanks to the sheer age of the solar system and the universe, much of the stuff that could have hit us has already hit us or something before us. Moon craters, not just on our moon, show the impact of previous asteroids. Planets have already been bombarded by debris floating about. So while the chances are not zero, they are fairly low. Also, we are a very small planet, literally a pale blue dot even before you leave the solar system, and nearly invisible once you leave the solar system. Story 33. The fact that at any moment in life we can suddenly die from a random brain aneurysm. Story 34. When you are in the process of dying, the last part of your brain function to go is related to your hearing. Essentially, you can hear everything around you, but you are locked in. Whether you can comprehend it is for a person much smarter than me to answer. Imagine understanding that the people around you are mourning and all you can do is listen. Or even worse, there is nobody. Story 35. People who are allergic to cockroaches should not drink ground coffee because it may contain ground cockroaches. Story 36. The method to collect semen from a bull involves using an artificial vagina to simulate the natural mating process. I learned this from my father, a veterinarian, during a casual conversation over a beer on the back porch one Thanksgiving. Thank you, Dad. Story 37. Fatal familial insomnia is a rare hereditary disease that prevents you from sleeping. You begin experiencing hallucinations until you die. The disease destroys sleep cells, so taking sleeping pills does not help. There is a book about this disease titled The Family That Couldn't Sleep. This family was very large and witnessed the deaths of their children. It is a very disturbing condition. Story 38. I once read that unconventional preferences can be inherited. If you have a specific preference, the odds are higher that one or both of your parents do as well. Story 39. My sister said that when she was having my niece by cesarean section, her husband, who is an avid hunter and butcher, was watching as the obstetrician was stitching up her uterus. He remarked on the differences between deer, cow, and her uterus, and the obstetrician went along with it. My sister yelled for them to stop discussing her uterus and finish stitching her up. Story 40. There are some incredibly distorted or completely inaccurate facts listed here. That is pretty unsettling to me. Story 41. Dying of dehydration is really painful. So think about that next time you put yourself at risk of getting stranded. Story 42. One creepy fact I wish I never learned is that there is a rare disorder called Cotard syndrome, also known as walking corpse syndrome. People with this condition believe they are dead, do not exist, or have lost their internal organs. It is incredibly disturbing to think about the profound psychological and emotional impact this disorder must have on those who suffer from it. Story 43. Cluster headaches exist. There is no known cause and no known cure. They are incredibly painful and do not stop. The pain is so severe that some people have taken extreme actions because of it. Story 44. When in a jungle or forest, the noisy animals are safe. It is when they suddenly become quiet that it is creepy or scary. Story 45. Serial killer Joel Rifkin dismembered at least 2 of his victims with an X-Acto knife. Story 46. How much pressure the human jaw can hold. Horror movies have never been the same because now you know that people can actually bite someone's throat out. Story 47. It was believed all the way up to 1980 that babies could not feel pain. That means that in the same year that Living on a Prayer was popular on the radio, Somewhere there was a baby having open-heart surgery with no anesthesia. Living on a Prayer was released in 1986. When Another Brick in the Wall Part 2 was on the Billboard charts, some baby was having major surgery with no anesthesia. Story 48. The Yuba County Five were a group of 5 young men consisting of Bill Sterling, Jack Hewitt, Ted Weiher, Jack Madruga, and Gary Mathias, who all went missing after attending a basketball game at California State University in 1978. A few days after their disappearance, Jack's car was found in Plumas National Forest on a mountain far away from Yuba County, in working order. As the snow melted, 4 of their bodies were found, with Gary Mathias still missing to this day. Story 49. As of today, we cannot scientifically test the impact of microplastic in the human body because there is no control group. This means we do not have living humans without microplastic, not even those yet to be born. This also includes fetuses in the uterus. We did it. Story 50. BlackRock and Vanguard are buying millions of homes with the hope of turning middle-class people into permanent renters. They pay above the asking price without even looking at the house. They have purchased entire neighborhoods. The situation is only going to get worse. Story 51. It does not creep me out that much, but it is kind of depressing that stock laughs often used on top of sitcoms and similar shows were all recorded back in the 1950s. These are the laughs of the dead echoing over unfunny jokes. Story 52. Plants emit an ultrasonic sound when their leaves are cut or they do not receive enough water. Story 53. When a neurosurgeon removes a piece of your skull due to swelling, they store it in your abdomen to be used later when the swelling has subsided. Story 54. In real life, Nemo's father would have become female after the mother's death, so Nemo could have a relationship with him and have children. Story 55. An octopus is flexible enough to enter your mouth, go through all your intestines, and come out your anus. It is wild. To clarify, theoretically, it could push itself through that space. This is not about digestion in any form. Story 56. The bacterial spores of Bacillus cereus are present in all rice varieties and are not destroyed when cooked because the spores and toxin, which cause illness, are heat resistant. However, they are not active until the rice remains at room temperature long enough for them to germinate. It is best to cool the rice quickly and then immediately refrigerate it. Also, avoid reheating rice more than once. Story 57. Even if we live a healthy life, many cells in our body still have the potential to become cancerous. Story 58. Inspired by Identity Hacker 42, but your ears can hear sounds in your brain. It sounds like water pipes in an apartment. I only know this because I had an extremely blocked ear due to earwax. It had to be suctioned out with a vacuum machine by an ear, nose, and throat doctor. For the first 5 minutes after the procedure, I could hear water pipes throughout the entire hospital. As it turns out, my brain simply had not tuned it out. Soon, I could no longer hear the pipe sounds. I also know this was the case because the unblocked ear did not hear anything. Story 59. 10 years ago, the Federal Bureau of Investigation estimated there were 50 serial killers loose in the United States at any given time. Now they estimate there are at least 500 truck drivers with torture and murder chambers in their trucks, driving freely across the country. Story 60. I carried the eggs of my child and my grandsons. When a woman is pregnant with a female fetus, that fetus grows and stores all the eggs she will use in her lifetime. So while carrying my daughter, I also carried my grandson's eggs. I hope I explained this correctly. Story 61. Nigleria fowleri. I now have a somewhat irrational fear of ponds and lakes. I recently learned that Nigleria fowleri exists. Story 62. You do not actually smell dead and rotting animals. You are tasting the proteins in the air. I could have gone my whole life not knowing that little tidbit. Story 63. The number of people who go missing every year is staggering, with over 500,000 in the United States alone. While many are found shortly after, there are still a large number who remain missing. Story 64. I found out they remove your nipples and put them back on during a breast reduction. My breast reduction, to be specific. Story 65. The actions of the Ken and Johnson gang are horrendous, showing what some depraved humans are capable of. Story 66. This is more life-ruining than creepy. The Windows calculator keys between 8 and 9 are misaligned. The 9 key is mistakenly made 1 pixel off, and they are not arranged in a grid. They are not all lined up vertically. Once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Story 67. I worked for a private investigator doing editing. The devices they had were incredible. Literally anything can be a camera these days: chargers, car keys, water bottles, chapsticks. The videos they captured made me realize just how unaware people are of being recorded. We were shorthanded for a few weeks, and I drove with one of the investigators to do a stakeout. We followed people around all day, and they had no idea. It's scary to know that if you are being tracked, you will almost never know. Story 68. The national age of consent in Japan is 13. However, all the prefectures have set it at 18. Story 69. There could be black holes traveling close to the speed of light, flying through the universe, ready to swallow anything in their way. The scary part is they could be headed right for Earth, and we would not notice it. Story 70. Many of my fragrances used to contain castoreum. Castoreum is the base of many leather, animalic, and sheeper perfumes. Its scent is similar to vanilla and comes from the anal secretion of beavers. Since I doubt they use catch and release methods, I try to avoid it now. Story 71. Some members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints practice baptism by proxy for unbaptized deceased individuals, believing the deceased may choose posthumously to accept and thereby gain entry to heaven. Targets of this practice have included popes, United States founding fathers, the Buddha, Genghis Khan, and both victims of the Holocaust and Adolf Hitler. Story 72. It is legal in more than half of the states in the United States for doctors to perform pelvic examinations on unconscious patients during surgery or medical procedures without consent. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.